A kid, 11 years old. He walks into a brokerage firm in Omaha, Nebraska. He doesn't have a trust fund. His parents aren't millionaires. He's just a kid who has been reading every financial book in the library since he was 7 years old. That kid bought his first stock at age 11. His name was Warren Buffett. Today, he is worth over $100 billion, making him one of the wealthiest human beings who has ever walked this earth. But here is the thing that most people completely miss about Warren Buffett. It wasn't his intelligence that made him rich. It wasn't insider information. It wasn't luck. It was something far simpler and far harder. Patience, discipline, and a set of Stoic rules he has followed without exception for over 70 years. In this video, I am going to walk you through 10 of those rules, the exact principles that took a boy from Omaha and turned him into a $100 billion legend. And I promise you this, by the end, you will never think about money the same way again. Stay with me, because rule number 1 is going to challenge everything you think you know about investing.
Warren Buffett has 2 rules. Rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. Now, I know what you are thinking. That is obvious. Nobody wants to lose money. But here is what you do not understand yet. Most investors, most traders, most people who touch the stock market, they break rule number 1 constantly. Not because they are stupid, but because they are emotional. They see a stock dropping, they panic and sell. They see a stock climbing, they get greedy and buy at the top. They chase trends. They follow hot tips from social media. Buffett does the exact opposite. He thinks about the downside first. Before any investment, before any decision, his very first question is not how much can I make, it's how much can I lose. This is pure Stoicism. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, imagining the worst before it happens. Not to be pessimistic, but to be prepared. Buffett calls it his margin of safety. He only buys a stock when it is trading significantly below what he believes it is actually worth. That gap, that buffer, protects him if he is wrong. And he knows he will sometimes be wrong. The difference is, when he is wrong, he does not lose catastrophically. When he is right, which is most of the time, he wins big. Protect the downside first. The upside takes care of itself. Which brings us perfectly to rule number 2. And this one is where most young investors completely fall apart. It was 1999. The dot-com bubble was absolutely exploding. Every investor on Wall Street was throwing money at internet companies. Valuations were insane. People were getting rich overnight. The NASDAQ was up over 85% in a single year. And Warren Buffett? He sat on his hands. He did not buy a single dot-com stock. The media mocked him. Financial analysts said he was out of touch, out of date, that he did not understand the new economy. Then, in March 2000, the bubble burst. Trillions of dollars evaporated. Companies that were worth billions became worth nothing. Buffett was fine. Why? Because of one simple rule. Only invest in what you genuinely understand. He called it his circle of competence. Inside that circle, businesses he truly understood. Coca-Cola, insurance, banking, simple, boring, profitable companies. Outside that circle, everything else. And he had the discipline, the almost superhuman discipline,
to stay inside that circle, even when everyone around him was getting rich outside it.
This is profoundly Stoic. The Stoics talked about knowing your limits, not as weakness, but as strength. Knowing what you do not know is one of the most powerful things you can know. Most retail investors lose money trying to play in markets they do not understand. Crypto, options, complex derivatives. Buffett made $100 billion by sticking to what he knew. Rule 3 is where it gets philosophical, and honestly, it might be the most important one in this entire video. Imagine a medieval castle. Around that castle, a massive moat, deep water, maybe some crocodiles, a drawbridge that only opens when the king says so. That moat is the difference between a castle that survives sieges and one that falls. Warren Buffett thinks about businesses exactly the same way. He calls it the economic moat, and it is one of the most important concepts in his entire investing philosophy. A business with a wide moat has something that protects it from competition, something that makes it incredibly hard for rivals to take its customers. Maybe it is a brand so powerful that people would never switch, like Coca-Cola. You could launch 1,000 cola brands tomorrow, and people would still reach for the red can. Maybe it is network effects, like American Express. The more people use it, the more merchants accept it. The more merchants accept it, the more people use it. Self-reinforcing. Maybe it is switching costs, like when a business uses a specific software platform and changing it would cost them years of disruption. Buffett's question is always, in 10 years, will this company still be dominant? What stops someone from coming in and destroying their market? If he cannot answer that clearly, if the moat is not obvious, he does not invest. This is long-term thinking at its most disciplined. He is not asking, will this stock go up next month? He's asking, will this business still be a fortress in a decade? Now, Rule 4 is probably the one quote you have heard attributed to Buffett, but I guarantee you have never heard the full context.
Be fearful when others are greedy. Be greedy when others are fearful. You have probably seen that quote on a motivational poster, maybe a Twitter bio, maybe a Reddit finance thread. But do you actually understand what it means in practice? Because it is brutal in practice. March 2009. The global financial crisis is in full swing. The stock market has lost nearly 60% of its value. Banks are collapsing. People are losing their homes. The news is apocalyptic. Normal investors are in full panic mode. They are selling everything, getting out while they can. Buffett is buying. He invested $5 billion into Goldman Sachs when everyone else thought Goldman might not survive. He wrote a public piece in October 2008, right at the peak of the crisis, saying he was buying American stocks with his personal money. Courage. Incredible, almost irrational seeming courage. But here is why it was not irrational. Because Buffett understood something profound about markets. Prices are driven by emotion in the short term, and fundamentals in the long term. When everyone panics and sells, prices drop below what the businesses are actually worth. That is your buying opportunity. When everyone is euphoric and buying, prices rise above what businesses are worth. That is when you stop buying. Contrarian investing is not about being different for the sake of it. It is about being rational when everyone else has lost their rationality. Rule 5 is about time. Or more specifically, your obsession with wasting it.
Here is a fact that will break your brain. If you invest $1,000 at age 25 and it grows at 10% per year, by the time you are 65, that $1,000 becomes over $45,000. But if you wait just 10 years, if you invest at 35 instead, that same money only grows to about $17,000. Same money, same return, just 10 years difference. But you end up with 60% less. This is the magic and the ruthlessness of compound interest. Buffett understood this at age 11, which is why he was devastated that he did not start at age 8. He has made this point many times. Over 90% of his entire net worth was accumulated after his 50th birthday. Not because he suddenly got smarter, but because compound interest needs time to work its full miracle. He reinvested every single dividend. He never pulled money out of his portfolio unnecessarily. He let the snowball roll for decades. This is where most people fail. They make a good return in year one and immediately spend it. They disrupt the compounding. They cut the snowball in half just as it is starting to gather speed. The Stoic principle here is delayed gratification. Short-term discomfort for long-term extraordinary results. Rule 6 is the one that sounds the simplest and takes the most courage to actually do. Here is a fact that will break your brain. If you invest $1,000 at age 25 and it grows at 10% per year, by the time you are 65, that $1,000 becomes over $45,000. But if you wait just 10 years, if you invest at 35 instead, that same money only grows to about $17,000. Same money, same return, just 10 years difference. But you end up with 60% less. This is the magic and the ruthlessness of compound interest. Buffett understood this at age 11, which is why he was devastated that he did not start at age 8. He has made this point many times. Over 90% of his entire net worth was accumulated after his 50th birthday. Not because he suddenly got smarter, but because compound interest needs time to work its full miracle. He reinvested every single dividend. He never pulled money out of his portfolio unnecessarily. He let the snowball roll for decades. This is where most people fail. They make a good return in year one and immediately spend it. They disrupt the compounding. They cut the snowball in half just as it is starting to gather speed. The Stoic principle here is delayed gratification. Short-term discomfort for long-term extraordinary results. Rule 6 is the one that sounds the simplest and takes the most courage to actually do.
What if I told you that the best investment strategy in the world involves doing almost nothing? Not trading constantly, not checking your portfolio every day, not reacting to every piece of news, every analyst report, every tweet from a billionaire. Just doing nothing. Buffett has described an idea where investors are given an investing punch card with 20 slots. Those 20 slots represent every investment decision you get to make in your entire life. 20 punches. That is it. If you knew you only had 20 investment decisions available to you across your entire lifetime, how carefully would you choose each one? You would not be trading on hot tips. You would not be buying something because it's trending. You would research deeply wait patiently, and only act when you were absolutely confident. Buffett's holding period for many of his investments is measured in decades. He bought Coca-Cola in 1988. He still owns it. In a world of hyperactive trading, algorithmic bots, and minute-by-minute news cycles, his superpower is stillness. The Stoics called this non-reaction, not letting external noise dictate internal decisions. Most investors generate terrible returns, not because they pick bad stocks, but because they trade too much. Transaction costs, tax implications, emotional decisions made in moments of panic or greed. The discipline to sit on your hands when your instincts are screaming to do something, that is one of the rarest and most profitable skills in investing. Rule 7 hits differently because it's not really about stocks at all.
Here is something that might surprise you. When young people ask Warren Buffett for investing advice, his most consistent answer is not about the stock market at all. He tells them to invest in themselves. Specifically, to work on their communication skills. He has said publicly that a course he took on public speaking was one of the best investments he ever made. Not in dollar terms, in life terms. The ability to communicate clearly, to persuade, to present yourself and your ideas, he believes it can increase your personal value by 50%. Think about that. The most successful investor in history says your number one investment should be yourself. But it goes deeper than just communication. Buffett is one of the most voracious readers alive. He reads for 5 to 6 hours every single day. Newspapers, annual reports, books on business, psychology, and history. He calls this watering your mind. He believes the knowledge you accumulate over decades is like compound interest. It builds on itself, creating connections and insights that are simply not available to people who do not do the reading. This is deeply Stoic. The Stoics placed enormous value on self-improvement, on reason, on the constant development of one's own mind and character. External wealth is fragile. Markets crash. Businesses fail. But the knowledge, judgment, and character inside your head, nobody can take that from you. Buffett's real first investment was not Coca-Cola. It was himself. Rule 8 is about who you surround yourself with, and why Buffett says this matters more than almost anything else. Buffett once said, "Pick out associates whose behavior is better than yours, and you will drift in that direction." He means it profoundly. Think about Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger was Buffett's business partner for over 50 years. Buffett has openly said that Munger helped reshape the architecture of how he thought about investing, that Munger pushed him away from buying mediocre businesses at cheap prices, the strategy he learned from his mentor, Ben Graham, and toward buying great businesses at fair prices. That single mental shift is responsible for probably tens of billions of dollars of Berkshire Hathaway's value. One relationship. Decades of honest, challenging conversation. Transformative results. Buffett is also legendary for being selective about who he spends time with. He has talked about how spending time with people who drain your energy, who are dishonest, who make you feel worse about yourself, that is a real cost, a serious cost.
Conversely, surrounding yourself with people who are curious, ethical, ambitious, and honest, that elevates you in ways that are hard to measure but impossible to ignore. The Stoics wrote extensively about the importance of choosing your companions wisely. Marcus Aurelius understood that environment shapes character. You become the average of your closest relationships, Buffett chose his deliberately and carefully. Rule 9 is where we get into Buffett's philosophy on life itself, not just money. Warren Buffett is worth over $100 billion. He still lives in the same house he bought in Omaha in 1958 for $31,000. He still drives himself to work. He eats McDonald's for breakfast several times a week. He drinks 5 Cokes a day, the cheap ones from the can. This is not an act. This is not humility performance for the cameras. This is a man who genuinely does not value luxury for its own sake, who has never confused net worth with lifestyle. And here is why that matters financially. Every dollar he does not spend on a yacht, unnecessary luxury, or status symbols, that dollar stays in the machine. That dollar compounds. That dollar works for him while he sleeps. There is a difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich people buy things that look expensive. Wealthy people buy assets that generate money. Buffett's frugality is not a quirk. It is a competitive advantage. And now, the final rule, the one that ties everything together. Warren Buffett has said that the one thing he cannot buy more of is time. He can make more money. He has, repeatedly. But every morning he wakes up, he has used another day. Buffett protects his time the way other people protect their money. Very few meetings, very few commitments, long stretches of unstructured time for reading, thinking, and deciding. In a culture that glorifies busyness, where being overbooked is seen as a status symbol, Buffett guards his hours fiercely. Because he understands that his best asset is not his stock portfolio, it is his judgment. And great judgment requires time to think clearly. The final lesson of this video is not about stocks or compounding or moats. It is about the fact that Warren Buffett chose his life deliberately. He chose what to care about. He chose what to ignore. He chose patience over panic, simplicity over complexity, breadth over breadth. $100 billion is remarkable, but the life he designed to get there, unhurried, purposeful, deeply curious, that might be the greater achievement. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this: the most valuable investment you will ever make is choosing very carefully what you pay attention to. That is it. That is the secret. Now you know. If this gave you even one idea worth keeping, share it with one person who needs to hear it. And if you want more content like this on building real wealth with real principles, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.